For 600 years, they cast bronze so precise, so lifelike, that when Europeans finally saw it, they refused to believe it had been made in Africa at all. Then, in 1897, British soldiers found it and decided it belonged to them instead. This is the story of the Benin Bronzes.
Around the year 1280, Oba Ovonramwen of the Kingdom of Benin, in what's now southern Nigeria, established a royal guild of bronze casters called the Igun Eronmwon. It became the highest ranked of nearly 50 guilds inside the royal palace. We used a technique called lost wax casting, shape the piece in wax, encase it in clay, melt the wax out, and pour in molten brass. It's painstaking work, and we'd mastered it centuries before any European set foot in West Africa. When Europeans finally did see our work, some of them refused to believe West Africans had made it. They credited it to the Portuguese or to ancient Egypt. That theory has been completely disproven. This was ours, developed independently on our own timeline. Under Oba Ovonramwen in the 1440s and his successors after him, Oba Ovonramwen, known as the Conqueror, and Oba Ovonramwen, who ruled for nearly 50 years starting around 1504, Benin entered what historians now call its golden age. The guild answered to no one but the Oba himself. Membership was hereditary, passed down through families, and the head of the guild sat on the king's own privy council, one of the highest-ranking positions in the entire court. We cast thousands of plaques and commemorative heads, not just decoration, but a historical record. Every plaque showed the Oba largest at the center, chiefs and warriors next, servants smallest. You could read the entire structure of the kingdom just by looking at who the artists made big and who they made small. This was our government, our history, and our religion, cast in metal and hung on the walls of our own palace for us.
By the late 1800s, Benin was still fully independent, and the Oba controlled a trade monopoly over palm oil, rubber, and ivory that British merchants desperately wanted broken. British colonial officials had been pushing for years to force their way into the kingdom's internal affairs. The Oba kept refusing them. The Oba warned them not to come. In January of 1897, British officer James Phillips led an armed delegation toward Benin City anyway, timing his approach during one of the kingdom's most sacred ceremonies, a ceremony no foreigner was permitted to witness. He ignored the warning. Benin's forces ambushed his convoy. Of the roughly 250 men who marched in, only 2 walked back out. Britain called it a massacre and used it as its excuse. 18 days later, 1,200 armed men came back, not to negotiate. Split into 3 columns, they burned every village in their path and shot into the bush at anything that moved. One column was routed before it even reached the city. The other 2 fought through 10 days of resistance until, on February 18th, they broke through and set Benin City on fire. Then they went looking for the palace. What they found stopped them cold. Room after room of bronze plaques and ivory carvings, centuries of Benin's own history, cast by their own hands, exactly where they'd left it. They didn't just take it, they stripped it off the walls piece by piece and shipped it to London to be sold. Oba Ovonramwen escaped the initial attack, but surrendered months later, rather than watch his people keep dying to protect him. He was exiled to a town called Calabar, hundreds of miles from his throne, and he died there in 1914. Never once allowed to go home. The looting wasn't incidental. Estimates of how much they took range from around 2,000 to as many as 5,000 individual pieces. The destruction was too total, and the looting too chaotic, for anyone to have counted it precisely at the time. British officers were explicitly authorized to take pieces as payment for the cost of the expedition, and the Admiralty auctioned off most of what remained to museums and private collectors across Europe and America to help cover the bill.
Our history was sold to pay for its own destruction.
The Bronze Casters Guild collapsed entirely. Many artisans fled the burning city, and for 17 years there was no Oba on the throne to patronize the craft at all. The entire system the guild had depended on for 600 years simply stopped existing. When the Benin monarchy was finally restored in 1914, surviving casters regrouped on Igun Street and rebuilt the tradition from what was left. Of all the palace guilds that had operated for centuries, the Bronze Casters were the only one that managed to fully reorganize. It's still practiced there today, on the same street, passed hereditarily from father to son, generation to generation, more than a century after the invasion that was supposed to end it for good. Today, pieces of what was taken sit scattered across 165 museums around the world. For most of the last 100 years, every museum holding a piece of Benin's history gave the same answer. No. That finally started to change. Just not everywhere.
Jesus College, Cambridge went first in 2021. The Horniman Museum followed in 2022. Then Germany did something no one expected, transferring legal ownership of more than 1,100 bronzes in a single agreement, the largest ownership transfer in the collection's history. Only a handful were physically handed over that day. Most stayed in German museums on loan to be returned gradually over the following years. The Smithsonian returned 29. In 2025, the Netherlands returned 119 pieces at once, calling it the largest physical return since the looting itself. Cambridge's own archaeology museum has now committed to sending back around 100 more. Added up, and well over 1,000 pieces have come home or are on their way. That's real progress, until you look at who still hasn't said yes. The British Museum in London holds the largest single collection anywhere on Earth, more than 900 pieces, nearly as many as everyone else's returns combined. It has given back exactly 0. For decades, its answer has been the same: not won't, but can't. Under the British Museum Act of 1963, its trustees are legally barred from permanently removing anything from the collection. In November of 2025, the UK passed a new law making restitution easier for museums across the country, and wrote in a specific carve-out, excluding the British Museum, the Tate, and the National Gallery. Parliament made return easier everywhere except the one place holding the most. It isn't the British public standing in the way. One national poll found 49% supported returning looted museum artifacts, against just 15% opposed. The museum itself says it remains open to discussion. It's even funding archaeology training on the ground in Benin City, helping build the infrastructure to house objects it still won't send home. We built our own place to receive them anyway. The Edo Museum of West African Art is opening in Benin City. Proof, the old argument that these objects need to stay in Europe to be safe was never really about safety at all. Nigeria's National Commission for Museums and Monuments, led by Olugbili Holloway, is still asking. The British Museum is still saying, open to discussion. It's been saying that for years. We are still building the house. They are still holding the key.